Greetings, sentient beings. This broadcast is not intended for children. There may be strong language and adult themes.
Beware, you may learn something.
Yep. That somehow we seem to sneak a little bit of that into every stream.
Alright, so today is on Autistic Inertia, right?
Yep.
You want to start in on that since it was your topic
Yep.
idea?
Yeah, well, and this is something that I only learned about like in the last year or so, which I find really surprising because even talking to therapists and psychologists, I had often said that what I really have is an inertia problem. That,
Yeah,
and everybody can have some degree of this. It's just it's much autistics tend to get a much more serious degree that, just we once we get started on something, we stay fixed on a certain track, and any kind of interruption, is really a major disruption to us. There's no thing like, can you look at this for a moment and getting back to what you were doing? That's really hard for autistic people to do.
yep. And
So
also,
autistic people, whatever mode they're in, they want to stay in that mode, which it makes it very hard to get started on projects, and then it makes it very hard to find a stopping point to move away from the project.
it also makes it difficult to get started too. So,
Yep.
uh, uh, so basically,
Sorry.
it's a starting and stopping issue, effectively. A,
Yeah, and that's my big issue is just getting started. Once I've taken the first two steps on a project, I'm good and I can keep going for 20 to 30 hours nonstop. But I can spend hours before I get that first piece started.
yep, that's definitely autistic inertia. Uh, well, anyway, it's not surprising they didn't know too much about it because it's really a not very well understood or well studied.
Yeah, I'm just surprised that, even professionals in the field don't really seem to be very aware of it.
Uh, the term autistic inertia is actually he comes from obviously Isaac Newton's his first law of inertia, and it was coined in the 90s.
Yep. That's I was hoping Paige was going to be with us for this. Because part of his diagnosis is pathological demand avoidance,
Yeah,
which is
that's
something that, you know,
it.
plays into this. It is a separate kind of a separate sub-diagnosis,
Yeah,
but it
though,
plays into this as well.
though it can manifest as avoidance.
Well, it can also often look like extreme demand a- avoidance.
Yes,
Yeah,
it can actually manifest as that even.
yeah. Which
That's it.
basically the demand avoidance though is more like a problem with it will seem like rebellion to other people because the demand avoidance is, something that, you're supposed to do or you need to do, but you don't do it, and it comes across as being stubborn or rebellious,
Oh,
if somebody reminds you to do it.
well, basically, here I have little thing pulled up on that. Is autistic people may avoid demands or situations that trigger anxiety or sensory overload. Blah. Disrupt routines involve in transitioning from one activity to another, and activities, even events that they don't see the point of for have an interest in. And that last little bit actually does play into who autistic inertia activity. disrupting activities they're already doing, or finding the point, no point in doing it,
Yeah,
because that actually does play into autistic inertia.
yeah. Well, I have a lot of problems even with things that, that I realize that, okay, if I complete this, yes, it benefits me directly, but I still have a problem getting going on it,
Yep.
you
Uh,
know, and actually, I've said that, I grew up in a house that always had at least a dozen people. So for me growing up, it was like if I could tolerate the mess one day longer than anyone else in the house, I didn't have to do it. This strategy does not work well living alone.
no. No, you're right. I did have some excerpts on the. It's from a study from last year. It's
Oh, okay, go ahead.
autistic and non-autistic researchers conducted semi-structured interviews with 24 autistic adults. Also, interestingly enough, included trans women and trans men and non-binary individuals. Those within that group. We analyzed the data using thematic analysis is adopted in inductive approach within an essentialist framework. Interview we spoke in depth of their inertia and difficulties moving from one state to another, and describe how these changes is pervaded every single day. Uh, and then I kind of skipped down to another part in or under Newton's law of inertia, an object like that at rest stay is at rest, an object like the motion stay is in motion, and at a constant velocity unless the state is changed by a force. It's basically how it is with autistic inertia, except it's more of a psychological thing, or it can be a physical thing. The term
Yep,
inertia was adopted by the autistic community in the 1990s, which I mentioned, in reference to the seemingly common experience of remaining in a mental and physical state of rest or motion until intervention. And although autistic inertia is part of the autistic community, his everyday lexicon, and has received scant attention in the academic literature. And they actually, in this particular thing I'm reading from, this actually tried to look at both the positive and negative aspects of autistic inertia, whereas there's other studies prior to this really only looked at the negative aspects.
yeah,
uh, Skipping over, indeed, autistic people have described experiences of inertia as being their single biggest problem. However, autistic people will also describe, however, apparent and advantages of inertia, especially the experience of being so deeply immersed in an activity or a thought that they cannot or do not want to stop. Uh, Thus, people who can remain in a state of inertial motion until, in quotes, uh, until interrupted. The autistic tendency to focus intensely on tasks, topics, or objects of interest is described negatively in the clinical literature as restricted, repetitive patterns of behavior, or interests or activities. These, that can also kind of play into special interests.
yeah. Well, that's the part about not wanting to stop being a positive thing. Yes, that's how I'm the most productive. Is because, like I said, that once I get going on a project, I will focus on it and I will keep working on it for 20 to 30 hours without eating or sleeping. All I'll do is get up to go to the bathroom and, get another bottle of water.
Yep.
And yeah, that's those huge blocks of times are when I can be just, mind-bogglingly productive, and like a project that I've put off for 6 months, I can get done in 2 days.
And this is also why the autistic people tend to be very good at repetitive tasks
Yep,
that take long periods of time, because we can just hyper focus on that and just get on that inertia and
yep.
just go on
Which,
and on and on forever.
which is why I've said that, a lot of autistics would be very well suited for lab work, where they have to just be setting up, like 100 samples of the same thing so that they can have all the different variations on an experiment going. Yeah, and obviously for assembly line working, that's, standing in one spot all day doing a very repetitive task.
Mm. See, where was I here? No. Uh, the normal in intensity your focus, which is an adult spending hours writing out timetable rules yada yada. We can skip over that. Yeah, autistic people.
No,
People
don't skip over the writing out a timetable.
writing out a timetable. Well, that's basically where it ended anyway.
Okay, yeah, that was something that my ex, kind of laughed at me about, which was only more demoralizing, that I would try to, set up a schedule to block out all my time for the week, mostly because I had to block everything out around taking care of the kids.
Mm.
And she used to laugh at me because I would plan everything out, but I would have trouble sticking to the plan.
That's actually one recommendation some I came across on how to help coping with it. Yeah, autistic people themselves often describe in these periods of hyperfocus as achieving the desirable optimal flow state, an exhilarating state of consciousness is whereby a person becomes completely absorbed in an activity. Let's see here. Our interviewee is reported or it may made it clear that autistic inertia is a fundamental part of the autistic experience. What is less clear, however, is whether inertia is also uniquely uniquely autistic experience. There is some suggesting that this may actually go across the neurodivergent spectrum,
Yeah.
though it's apparently more pronounced within autism. Uh,
Yeah,
although,
Terry's saying here that I think it's a self-protection, and again, that's something I've identified in myself, that there is actually a problem with finishing a project.
mm, I'm not so sure it's necessarily a matter of protection. I suppose it could be. I mean,
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, and this is my personal experience, that the problem with finishing a project is once it's finished, then comes the time that people are going to judge my work.
mm,
So it's kind of scary to actually finish.
another problem with finishing the project is you're finished. Then what? You got the inertia.
It's not like I have any shortage of projects piled all around my apartment.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. The whole thing of the inertia is to be on one thing, doing that constantly
Yeah.
until you're completely disrupted. But no, once you're finished, you still got that inertia going.
Well, yeah,
So it
but
makes it difficult to get to the next project.
well, for me, once the project is finished, the next project is usually sleep because I've expended so much energy, I can't do much else at that point.
Yeah, it's usually where what usually breaks any cycles I have is I completely crash.
Yeah.
Our interviewees made it clear that I read that already. Where was I? Although our participants describe a task for reaching difficulties as part and parcel of being human, and the difficulties the autistic experience in terms of the intensity of these difficulties. Furthermore, our participants report of difficulties starting tasks, regardless of willpower. So you can't will yourself into doing it or stopping, basically.
Yeah. And also with the inertia, it is very hard to stay on the schedule because you can't really plan out, how long it's going to take you to get going on something or how long it's going to take you to finish it.
They also mention here that this is distinct from procrastination, which is defined as prev- propo- uh, sort of delay in starting or completing tasks. So it's not procrastination. Basically, what
Yeah.
they're saying here. It's something completely different, though it can appear here as such.
Well, and that's the thing with me that it's to everyone else, it looks like I just procrastinate endlessly, and it's just that thing of, just, getting up the emotional energy to actually dive into a project.
I'll procrastinate later.
Yeah, I'll procrastinate when I'm dead, I'll have plenty of time for it then.
Yeah. Overall, these descriptions suggest is that autistic inertia may be both quantitative and qualitative, different from the neurotypical experience of task switch difficulties. And their conclusion here, I did skip over quite a lot in this because it's going over methods and all that. Uh, in some, our findings reveal that autistic inertia is a double-edged sword, yielding in both joyful and highly disabling experiences. These findings are an essential first step in developing a formal definition of autistic inertia, which will in turn be essential for raising awareness of autistic inertia and reducing the stigma associated with inertial changes. Is developing support or support to manage these challenges is in celebrating the unique conventions of the autistic inertia confers. So, so but basically what that covers.
Yeah, Carrie, if you're up to jumping in here, you seem to have a lot going on this topic, and, you certainly don't have to have your camera on, I never do.
Yeah, I use a AI generated image, so uh, well, actually, all reading about all this ahead of time before the show actually got me thinking. Maybe that was part of why I had such difficulty in getting to school and dealing with school overall.
Yeah. Well, and I know for me, it's why, I'm constantly running late, and well, it contributes to it. Part of it's just, again, the time blindness thing of not really having an accurate idea of how much time I'm spending on something.
Yep, that's another part of it. Like I got a whole list of things I took note of from I think it was a psychologist or psychiatrist who's from a video I was looking at, but they mentioned starting and stopping tasks is a issue with it. Once you can't you have trouble getting started with the task, but once you get going, you're good. But you have trouble stopping to go do something else, as we
Yeah.
mentioned before. Resuming activities.
Yeah.
So again, once you've stopped doing whatever it is, or if you got interrupted, you can have trouble getting back to it.
Yeah, well, and it's one of the things I've had to explain to Sloth Girl several times. She's finally got it. Is that like if I'm getting ready to take her to an appointment, her calling me to remind me about something is just going to break my flow, and that will definitely make me late. Because like a 2-minute phone call can set me back half an hour getting ready.
Mm. Uh,
Just because I have trouble figuring out again exactly, what track I was on or what things I had done and what things I still need to do.
the feeling of lack of control, in fact, was the next point, which would probably just be pretty much exactly what you were just describing there.
Yeah,
Feelings of indecision, or having trouble deciding what to do. So
I might have that. I'm not sure.
I'll have to think about that. Again, of course, as mentioned, time blindness. So it can be. I can actually go both ways with time blindness. So you could have it where you think you've spent an hour on a subject and you've only been in 10 minutes, or you could have it seemed like it was only a few minutes and it's been 4 hours.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly the latter case. That's something I thought I only spent 15 minutes on, took an hour and a half.
Yeah, I get that a lot at night for some reason. I'll get into like reading something and figure, okay, I'll just read a little something before bed, and next thing I
Yep.
know, it's 3 4 hours later.
And the internet is designed to do that to people. The internet is designed to take you off on all sorts of tangents and for you to lose track of where you started. And that's why it's like, I'll start googling something, on the history of some ship in World War II, which, it's like I just need to get the date and a couple of names because it's a story I already know. And 3 hours later, I'm reading something about geodesic domes.
Yeah, yeah. I started looking Hitchin, and then somehow I ended up uh, watching a video on people slipping on bananas.
Yeah. Well, yes, and of course, the cute animal videos that you think, "Oh, it's only a 2-minute short. This isn't gonna get me distracted too far off task, right?"
Yeah, sure. 12 videos later.
Mm. Otters destroy my workflow.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that there we go. We need to have that on bumper sticker.
Yeah. Well, Sloth Girl is my otter half. We're nothing romantic or sexual going on, but we have to stay close enough to hold hands so we don't drift apart.
Another thing they mentioned was mind body separation. Can't translate what you're thinking to action or what your actions are to you getting into the thought process of it.
Yeah, Carrie, I'm kind of the other way around. I always know I can handle the situation other people are falling apart about. I don't get to thinking about whether or not it can handle me until all that's taken care of,
Mm.
which is something that made me excellent for dealing with kids, but, again, not so useful now.
Also useful for dealing with emergency situations.
Yep. Yeah, we talked about that last week about being able to do first aid and get somebody to the hospital before I realized I was having an emotional response to it.
Yeah. And I had to deal with that a lot with my mom. Dealing with her going into diabetic reactions and stuff. Okay, we're gonna deal with this now. I'll worry about breaking down later.
Yep. Yeah, well, that was with my late fiance with her asthma attack. It's like, yeah, get her nebulizer loaded up, get that to her, get her into the car so we can get her to the hospital. And yeah, then once one of the hospital interns is taking her back, okay, now I don't have to worry about her anymore. Oh shit, what did I just go through?
Yeah. That was kind of how it was with when I found my mom dead. I just kind of kicked in, tried to resuscitate her. I called 911 and got the medics there. It wasn't until after the medics got there and they realized there was no reviving her. And it's like that's when I broke down.
Yeah. Yeah, my late fiance collapsed right in front of me and I called 911 and the paramedics were not finding a heartbeat, so they did the defibrillator and got her into the ambulance, and yeah, she was pronounced dead before they got her to the hospital.
Mm.
And I still have things that drive me back. Yesterday, Sloth Girl and I were in a craft store and just walking down the aisle with the art supplies, with the canvases and paints and such. was almost enough to bring me to tears because they were on sale and there were so many perfect presents for her.
Mm.
It's weird what will trigger off memories from so many years ago, huh?
Yeah. Mhm. You ever have a thing where you're in a place you've been into for a long time, and if you can remember like a long time back, like having good memory of it, and it actually almost seemed like a ghost image of the past. You ever get anything like that? I get that sometimes.
Um, yeah, not so much for me, just because I've kind of, you know, after each major life event, I wound up moving, so I wasn't really
Yeah.
going into the same places.
I'm going into the same places since I've been basically living this place for
Well,
since I was little.
I do get that. I do get that, I guess, when I go to the science museum because I spent so much time chasing toddlers through the museum.
Mm. I was just kind of wondering, is it it's a really strange sensation. It's I wouldn't exactly describe that as visual, but it's almost visual.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just such a strong emotional response. You're kind of reliving the experience.
Like I could sit. I was like sitting in a parking lot area of this place. So I was able to almost see where all the old stores were. So it was a really weird thing. But trying to get back on task. Here was being about getting on task. Indifference to task. Funny enough, and that can also play into motivation. So you can actually, due to the lack of getting motivated into it or getting into starting the task, you can actually be indifferent to it.
Yep.
And
Well,
that,
I think one of the things on an emotional level, as far as the starting a task, or actually for any point on it, is just whatever you're doing right now just kind of feels comfortable. So there's some anxiety about changing your current state.
mm, yeah. Though that also going back to the demand avoidance that played into that last part that I read about, you know, at the point of not seeing the point of having an interest in it or having an interest in it, whatever the task
Yeah.
may be. So that's another thing where that kind of overlaps with demand avoidance.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm running into a lot now is just, the routine house chores. Just things like, doing dishes and vacuuming the carpet, and it's like, yeah, I know it needs to be done. It could probably wait till tomorrow, that kind of stuff. And
Yeah,
again, that it looks like procrastination, but it's just kind of like, I'm doing something that's so much more interesting than that.
mm, I get that way a lot with having to wash dishes. Though on top of that, I also have a problem where if I'm standing there trying to wash the dishes for more than about 15 minutes, my lower back starts hurting for some damn reason. I think it's just
Well,
a
yeah, if you're, contributing pain to it, that's gonna make it that
yeah,
much worse. But
yeah, it makes it worse.
I really don't have that excuse. I just, like I say, for me, it's mostly like, you know, um, do I really need to do dishes every night, or can it wait because there's something cool going on over here, or I've got a Lego set I didn't finish building.
Yeah.
Um, the one I was reading from, also went into a lot that the indecision or anxiety with planning or starting a task goes heavily into the executive functions, which that was my ADHD testing results were that I don't have ADHD, but I am almost completely lacking in executive functions.
Well, that
which is basically to say that, I'm not good at, basically things like estimating time and planning out how much time a project's going to take.
you just start the project and do it.
Yeah, well, and that's again, it's a stressor if I'm doing a project for someone else because, they want they want a deadline. They want to know, okay, when is this going to be finished? And honestly, the only honest response I can give them is
I don't
it'll be done
know.
when it's done. I've got no idea how long this is going to take.
uh, well, they also that person I was just getting that list off of also listed some ideas for and coping with it, like working with the inertia. And so you once you got on task, just keep working with it. And that can also go into planning out the day around on the inertia. So you basically finish everything in a single block of work. That way you take advantage of that inertia you have. And they also recommend creating a routine, which obviously very common for people who are autistic to be on routines.
Yeah,
And
but that's another one of the things that for different people it can go both ways. That, like I say, for me, routines or schedules are something I've just never been good with.
yeah, they did mention that not all of these suggestions necessarily work for everybody.
Yeah, well, and that's really the thing that I think makes the autism really hard to understand for a lot of people is that, that it's this whole mass of interplaying symptoms. And you're not going to find anyone who has all of these symptoms, but, you know, out of these 50 symptoms, each autistic person will have some random selection of half of them.
Mm. Yeah, for instance, one that probably would not work for me is the routine buddy suggestion they made of having somebody there to help kind of help you keep on task and everything.
Hmm.
And okay, you need to switch over to this. And so we're setting alarms for certain tasks, whatnot. That again probably wouldn't really work to me. The having set timer is of when to start and stop, not to help with the time blindness.
The timers wouldn't help me. That's my late fiance did help me a lot because basically, that just while we were sitting, in the evening, it was more relaxed time. She'd ask me just, to make up a list of everything I thought of that still needed to be done.
Yeah,
And
they
then she would take that list and she would organize for me like which tasks were related, so how
oh,
one task could flow into another task to work with the inertia that way.
yeah, that's a good yeah. Having somebody like that can help. I guess in your case it would help. In my case, probably wouldn't really be all that useful.
Yeah.
I'd probably find the person end up being kind of annoying. That actually gets into another one of the suggestions is to make it to do list.
Yeah, well, that's I couldn't have had somebody doing that like in a work situation, like a supervisor. I She was the only one who could do that because she was the only one I really trusted that was more concerned about my welfare than about how many of these jobs I got done.
Yeah, that's a problem I have with working under people.
The main problem I have with working under people is I ask why and they don't give me reasons, so I say fuck you and don't do it. My logical thing kicks in that unless there's a defined purpose for it, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. And actually, when we did cover that one, and it goes again back to how it overlaps with demand avoidance.
Yeah. Yeah, I looked into the the demand avoidance. After Paige had done a video about that. I should have had a link ready for his video on that. But yeah, I read into that, and it's like, yeah, parts of that relate to me, but I didn't really think that's something I have.
Yeah, that's another common thing. With you can have parts of stuff, but not necessarily have the whole thing. It's very common. That's why it's autistic spectrum.
Yep. Another thing, as part of the inertia that was mentioned in the article I was reading, was actually a feeling of a separation between mind and body.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's definitely something that I've actually learned how to use this as a meditation exercise. That if I'm having a serious pain, I feel like I can mentally detach one of my limbs, so I'm not feeling the pain, so I can focus on what I was doing.
And they even like I mentioned, mind body separation can translate your thinking actions or reverse. So
Yeah.
yeah, just basically it kind of on the same plane at that as that. Uh, the last suggestion they had on this list was the use transition periods. So basically, once you've gotten a task done, or you need to stop a task, go for a walk, take a shower, do some kind of relaxing thing in
Hmm.
between in the tasks. That way, you can break it up that way.
Yeah. Well, and there's also a problem in the inertia with getting stuck. If something in the project doesn't go as planned, that you run into something unexpected, and it's just kind of like you come up to a road closed sign and you don't know which way to turn.
I've
And you
run into
just
that.
wind up sitting there not knowing what to do at that point.
Yeah, you want to go both directions then.
Yeah, well, it's like you don't know what the shortest alternate route is. So you can sit there kind of spinning your wheels and not being able to make a decision on, what alternate you should try.
Yeah. Right,
Sorry, people. I've been kind of looking at my notes here and not really following the side chat so much. So let me try to catch up on that here.
all right. If you wanna, well, while you're catching up, I got the something here. I can pull up here. There you are.
Oh yeah, Carrie was asking if we. Oh damn it! I had it a moment ago. Carrie was asking something about, do we make lists or charts to organize things?
Yeah, that is one suggested way of dealing with it, but doesn't necessarily work with everybody.
Yeah, well, and I make myself lists late at night when things are calm. And that old thing about the to-do list, that the first thing on your item is to find the list.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
second.
I'm sure somewhere in this pile of paperwork next to me, there are at least 5 to-do lists that I lost the same night that I made them, so I don't know what's on them.
It's first step on to-do list. Start to-do list. Second step up to do on to-do list is to don't lose to-do list. So sometimes just playing it loosely can backfire. Yeah, that can backfire quite a bit.
Yeah.
Usually, what I usually try and do with what I need to is plan things out. I'll plan it out in my head, so I have it all organized in my head, so I don't actually have a physical list. For instance, so okay, I wake up, I walk the dog. After that, I feed the bird, Good. I get my coffee started. Right now, I take care of watering the garden and feed Molly. He have my coffee. So that's my morning routine right there.
Yeah.
And Molly heard her name and mentioned a bunch of times and came in here and say hi. Hello.
Yeah. Carrie, my default mode is always being, overly logical. It really takes rather a lot to get an emotional response from me. And I think part of that is just, a lifetime of training, because when I have an emotional response, it's usually not what other people consider to be the correct response. So I got reprimanded for it so much that I, only have emotional responses when I'm home alone, which after I've been suppressing it for 5 or 6 hours, it just winds up I get into my own space and have a meltdown.
Anyway, what I have up here is this is actually from a 2021 study that looked more at the negative aspects of it. So, you know, you have the external factors that affect inertia, activity in the environment, expectations of other people, which can be disruptive.
Mate,
And
could you enlarge this a bit so it's a little easier to read the text?
uh, no, it
Oh,
goes too big.
yeah. Okay.
That's why I'm having to read. I'll have to read description, initial experience instead of inertia, the internal, well, that's tendency you need to maintain in one state, a lack of voluntary control, difficulty finding in the first step, and disconnecting between intention and action. That's the mind-body disconnect there, right there in that fourth earth column.
Yeah, difficulty finding the first step, I think, is the one that trips me up the most.
Yeah,
It's like I take a view of the whole project and I have trouble breaking it down into small enough parts to deal with.
that goes hand in hand with the tendency to maintain one state. So you can't figure out how to get started, but once you get started, you don't stop. And that also plays into the lack of voluntary control. So goes into the effects here on
Mhm.
how the person feels, constantly exhausted. Like it can be exhausting, I suppose. Then again, it also can be exhilarating too. Stress and overload. You almost seem like you're taking on too much at once.
Yeah, I often feel overwhelmed.
Uh, Difficulty meeting needs. It's what you're talking about. Oh, 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 with other people. Well, we'll get it done when we get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, or just doing things up to other people's standards that they don't like the way it looked, and I was like, "You didn't tell me the appearance was important, I made it functional."
Yeah. Yeah, it's usually how I am about things. He's like, I don't really much care about the appearance as long as it functions.
Yep,
uh, Effects of and on emotions, which obviously we just mentioning how that can affect our emotional state. It's obviously
mhm,
with constant exhaustion and stress and overload. I think that pretty much speaks for itself. Is almost seems redundant to mention effects on emotions here.
yeah,
Effects on how the person lives, difficulty maintaining relationships, reduce productivity. So actually, can even though once we get started, you can be super productive, but also trying to get started makes it difficult to be productive, as I mentioned with washing the dishes.
yep. Yeah, and
That,
like I say that, it can take me hours just to get started on a project, so that's a lot of time wasted.
yeah, or trying to get someplace, as you mentioned, having the 2 minute call that
Yeah,
throws you off for a half hour.
yep. Okay, what's the stuff in the green? External factors?
Yeah, those are external factors. Activity in the environment, and expectations of other people. So it
Yeah.
kind of affects the internal. So that would be basically the things that would interrupt you,
Yeah.
and it can be very disruptive if when you're interrupted.
Yeah. Well, in activities in the environment, I think often goes back to a lot of the problems, of sensory overstimulation. That if there are other things going on around you, even if they don't involve you and, nobody's really talking to you or anything, just like the level of background noise and, things moving constantly in your peripheral vision, can all be, just sensory overload for autistic people, which can cause them to freeze up.
Yeah. In fact, when I was trying to read this, I had all little noises and stuff going on, and every so often it was making it very difficult for me to read over all this beforehand.
Yeah, I put on my Amazon wish list some of those earplugs that Paige was suggesting last week.
Yeah, I might put some pair of those on my wish list as well. Give them a shot. I have another one here. Share this tab instead. That one's I should be bigger. This is from that one study I was reading from last year that took all the excerpts out of. This was the chart they put together from it. So you have the first one, difficulty in moving from one state to another. So that breaks down the difficulties with starting and stopping are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
So it's living in extremes is another point he found out from those interviews. You're either all in or not at all. uh,
Well, I am so used to living my life just in survival mode and just doing crisis management that it's like anytime it was quiet, it was just trying to get a little bit of a rest before the next crisis. And now when I'm finally in a living situation that, things aren't blowing up on me 2 or 3 times a week, I can't get myself started because nothing seems urgent now.
yes.
Okay, we're on to willpower.
Yeah, well, willpower or not. That's I just can't. I'm in and out of tasks easily. I'm guessing that they're basically quoting what the interviewees said.
Yeah.
They can't just come into tasks easily, which pretty much what you were just mentioning.
Yeah, you can't have somebody say, "Can you put that down and help me over here for a minute?" and then expect to get right back to where you were.
And that also plays into getting started with the task as well.
Yep.
Well, this doesn't really seem that important to do, so why
Mhm.
they bother? uh, Getting the second point here, it pervades every single day, managing
Yeah.
inertia in the public eye. So I'm guessing that
Yeah, that
it's dealing
goes
with.
back to just everyone else thinking you're procrastinating all the time.
Mm, no, I actually sometimes wondered about that with myself, and reading about this actually kind of making things looking back a lot more makes a lot of things make a lot more sense now.
Mhm.
Because I wasn't really aware of this until you brought it up as a topic. So
Well, like I said, I only found out about this like a year ago, but yeah, it explains a lot of things in my life.
yeah, it was like okay, well, I'm not lazy, but why can't I get going?
Yeah.
Am I just a procrastinator? No, that doesn't seem quite right either.
Yeah, well, I had always wondered, because I felt I just always had a problem with motivation because I could I could plan a task out on paper, but I could never get started with really doing it. And I just thought it was a motivation issue. And I talked about my therapist a lot about, well, how do I get more motivated? And yeah, it's not actually a motivation. It's this inertia thing that, yeah, if I'm sitting in my chair petting the cat, that's a comfortable thing to do. So it's really hard to start on the project I'm supposed to do.
Mm. Yeah, the behind closed doors inertia challenges were greater. So basically, when you're by yourself, it's actually harder to either start or stop a project. So if you're on your own and you get it started building Legos, you can do that for 12 hours straight.
Yep. But yeah, that goes back into what I was saying about just getting the routine housework done. That, it's like, yeah, it's not like I ever have visitors anyway. Nobody else is going to see the place. So why does it matter?
Oh boy, that sounds just like me.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I've said that to myself a number of times. That exact thing.
Yep. So actually, for me, it is a good thing that we have yearly inspections here that I can't let it go too far.
Come on. Uh, what percentage of me being on the spectrum do each of you think should I be getting diagnosed? I'd say that's more of a thing for you to consider. I mean, if you're listening to this, maybe listen to a few other people talking about what it's like be autistic, and if you're basically sitting here nodding your head, yes, 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 might be good to go get a diagnosis.
Yeah, what I would really recommend still is, look up an autism, self-diagnosis quiz on the internet. Make sure it's from a good source. You'll have places like BuzzFeed do bullshit ones, so find one that's from a reputable university or research center, and that'll kind of give you a feel for it yourself. And after you have that, you could either just go with that, self-diagnosis is valid, or if you feel you need to, then take that to a professional therapist, and see what they think of it. And, if they want to recommend you to somebody who would make a professional diagnosis.
Yeah, in most cases, the professional diagnosis it can it can cost some money, but sometimes just having that peace of mind is just helpful.
Yeah. And depending on your insurance, the insurance may or may not cover it. Mine did, but I know for a lot of other people, mental health is still not covered in their health insurance.
I'll be just 1 second. Molly got her toy stuck.
Okay. um, I have, seen discussions about pros and cons about getting a professional diagnosis. Some people are afraid of, getting labeled or that for it, which I suppose it could have downsides. I don't really understand the downsides because it's really just part of your medical record.
Hmm.
So, with HIPAA laws and all, nobody else is going to be able to see that diagnosis unless you sign a waiver for them to look at your medical records.
Interesting that for a long while, I was actually kind of embarrassed about it for some reason, even though I could, sit here and talk about all the other issues I had. No problem. I don't know why though.
I was only embarrassed about it until I got a diagnosis, and then I could, kind of explain to things that, oh yeah. Well, like I said, when I did the self-diagnosis online, I showed it to all my friends, and the universal response was, "Oh, that explains a lot." So that just made me feel so much better about all the stuff I hadn't been able to explain to them.
Going back to this thing. single most disabling part
Yeah.
of being autistic.
Oh,
Making number
yeah,
three here.
Randall made a comment
So,
here. I'm having a smoke and it does help me. And yeah, for a lot of people, and including a lot of autistic people, something that gives you a simple ritual, can be a good thing to, kind of help you clear from one thing to get on to the next thing.
yeah,
So, yeah, just, like the simple ritual of just, walking outside and lighting a cigarette may be enough to kind of clear the old project out of your mind so then you can start thinking about the new one.
and this is also going to be longer term things like with me. I watch cartoons in the morning, so I did since I was a little kid. So doing that each
Yeah.
Saturday actually kind of brings my whole week into focus. If I don't, the whole week feels disrupted.
Yeah, it gives you a demarcation that this is the end of this week and a new week is starting.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, that's exactly how I used it during the pandemic, so I wouldn't have the days running into each other.
Yeah, I have a terrible problem with keeping track of what day of the week it is. Again, that for me that goes in with the time blindness that, you know, the days do all pretty much run together, except for, Saturday and Sunday because I know I can't call, to make doctor's appointments or follow up with the doctors for anything. But the rest of the week, it's like one day's just like the next. That was also part of why I put our chat in the middle of the week to, give me a scheduled thing that would kind of remind me that, okay, you've only got 2 days left this week to get this stuff done.
Hmm, that's a good idea. Definitely works. Anyway, going back here, three, the single most disabling part of being autistic. When unable to start a task, I just take a hit. So basically, they can't get it going. Oh well, just let it be.
Yeah, Carrie, the problem is that, most GPs, they're physicians. So they always look for physical causes for things and they always look for, is there a drug in the catalog that will help this physical cause? They're not used to addressing things as this could be something that your brain is doing rather than it being a physical pain. And GPs just generally, do not have their professional training really doesn't cover anything with mental health or autism. It's just outside their field, and that's why you're, better off scheduling time with a therapist for it.
Yeah, you need to speak to somebody who's trained with mental issues.
Yeah, and Randall, this is the reason that for years I had this little voice in my head that kept saying, kill your boss, which is terrifying when you're self-employed.
Yeah.
Hey, Skits. Holistic, yes, but it's really to track down, his office hours when the TARDIS keeps moving.
Yeah. And now he's like split into two people or something. I don't know. It's confusing.
I haven't kept up with the current ones.
You're lucky.
Although,
Uh,
I've been seeing ads that apparently Roku is playing all the classic episodes all the way back to the black and white ones.
yeah, nice. Yeah, it's
So
really.
now I've got to get a Roku TV.
They're not that expensive. They got the smaller one for a little under $100.
Actually, I know that I can get that they sell a Roku device that like plugs into one of the USB slots on my TV, and I
Mm.
know those are only like $30 or something.
Yeah, that's what I had before I was switched to upgraded to the TV. They're 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 really nice.
Yep. Okay, so back to your chart here.
Okay. When immersed in a task, yes, you'd like you let everything else slide.
Yep.
It obviously pretty much kind of goes without saying with everything else we've mentioned here so far.
Yeah.
That's almost the very definition of it. People will suffer internally, feeling full of shame and self-loathing. Again, that one I think is more of a societal thing.
Well, no, it's I do some of that to myself because I keep thinking, it's like, normal people can work 40 hours a week, so why can't I get these things done? Why can't I do at least 6 or 8 hours a day of accomplishing things?
Well, it's like that's what I said. I think it's more of a societal thing. That's more of a societal expectation that you
Yeah.
should be able to do that for 6 hours, like everyone else.
Yeah, like, why can't I get at least a project done every single day like most people would do? So, yeah, that's unfortunately that, yeah, mm, it doesn't help. It only winds up driving you into a downward spiral, to the point that I get so, um, I used the word before. I feel so demoralized by how little I've gotten done, that I do really shut down and I get absolutely nothing done and I need something to shake me out of it.
Mm.
Okay, so number 4.
For how to respond to initial changes, self-talk. Basically, try and talk yourself into or out of it. uh, impossible to stop without often an intervention from outside myself.
Yeah.
So needing somebody to who tell you, okay, time to stop, move on to the next project, like it was what was for you, or having
Yeah,
some
well,
other.
I need somebody to gently poke me and say, I realize what you're doing is important, but there's something else we have to do now that has to be done at this time.
Yeah, trying to do it more abruptly can be very. You want to be gentle about it, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
as getting into the using using methods to break it up, such
Yeah.
as taking a walk or taking a shower or something, and to actually break up the periods of inertia, so you can get from one task to the next.
Yeah, well, you know, like you were saying, it has to be gentle. It has to first be, acknowledging that yes, there was importance, there was value in what I was doing. So we will get back to it, but we've got something else that actually has a deadline.
That's actually another thing worth noting on that is what it might not seem important to anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, most of my projects don't seem important to anyone, and it's just a certain number of them that didn't seem important to any of them. When they see the finished project, they at least go, "Hey, that's pretty clever,"
Yeah.
because they couldn't see what the finished item was gonna be, and I couldn't stop to explain it to them. It's just, "Leave me alone, let me finish it, and then I'll show you."
Well, even if you don't have some kind of project like, where you have something you can show somebody as a accomplishment to it,
Yeah,
it still can be very important to that person.
yeah,
Like say you're just playing a video game, you play it for 6 hours. Whatever you're doing in that video game has no repercussions on anything or when but it was important to you at the time.
it's
It,
probable that most great minds throughout history were some type of neurodivergent, but search for society prior to the 1880s was more inclusive of it. The Industrial Revolution set forth mass mass focus on profiting and people getting left behind. Well, I'm not sure that that society was more inclusive of it before because you know, when we were just an agricultural society, most of the people were just kind of trying to scratch out enough to survive, and it was really only the nobility who had any leisure time to do anything that involved more than maintaining their house and producing food.
I had mentioned it has more to do with more when more largely unnoticed than anything.
Mhm. Well, yeah, because anything like the development of the tools or that they were using, was more something that, yeah, there was some clever person in the village who, found a way to make a tool a little better, and he showed his friends, and it just kind of spread because it was more efficient, but no one ever got credit for an invention there.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe they spent 12 hours a day poring over this concept for their new design of a tool too.
Yeah,
So where the special interest in hyperfixation and having that uh, inertia going all
yeah.
together resulted in this new invention.
Well, like I say, when I was doing landscaping, it was very repetitive once I learned the layout of each property, so it's like my mind was just running idle, so my brain was going over all sorts of projects, and actually that's where most of my novel came from, was that, I was just working on dialogue with the characters while I was mindlessly walking around. So that, certainly would have been something that, yeah, a farmer tending his field, his mind could have been off on whatever kind of project he thought was an interesting idea at the time.
Yep. Yeah, if you're sitting there just plowing your field for 5 hours, that gives you a lot of time to think.
Yeah, I think a lot of things too were that, before we became such a transient society that, when people didn't move around much, people were only interacting, with the people in their village. And, literally that a lot of people their entire life never went 50 miles from the place they were born. So it was like the same 100 people that they encountered every week. And it was unusual to encounter anyone who, wasn't born in the same village with you. So, just people were used to each other. People didn't really think it was strange. They just accepted that, yeah, well, that's the way Stan is and that's the way Bob is. And yeah, that's just been part of our life all along. So they didn't take much notice of it.
Yeah, some of those early settlements and all that would only have maybe 100 or so people, so they would go over to the next settlements over and kind of do sort of an exchange program, and just to keep inbreeding down.
Yep. Oh, hey,
Uh,
Jenny. Ah, fuck.
Okay, so last point here, being immersed in something could be a lot of joy, which is actually something that this particular study covered that wasn't really covered in any other study. And when I was kind of reading over that, I kind of got to wondering if there might be some actual physical neurological thing going on in that state, sort of almost comparable to a drug hit, as to why that might also explain why we get the inertia in the first place.
Oh, hey, Paige. I was hoping you'd show up. I left you a link on Twitter.
Yeah, come on in. You can help um, explain some of this stuff.
Yeah, I kind of wanted you to get in here and explain about PDA because that relates to what we're talking about here. Yep, and Jenny, that was really one of the big reasons we were doing these streams is just, to help everybody out there, learn a bit more about autism,
Yep.
and we're certainly open to questions from the chat there. If anybody's got anything that they wondered about.
Yep, I'm pretty much running low on material here from what I
Yep,
found, so
and
I mean,
don't be embarrassed about anything you want to ask. I'm very hard to offend. The majority of the time, I don't even realize when people are trying to offend me.
same here.
Oh, hey, Porpoise. Yep, we could use a couple more people to jump in here because Mage and I pretty much covered the material we had prepared. And here's Sinister Porpoise. Hello.
You're muted.
Yep, we can't hear.
Not only am I muted, I've got two audio streams. I need to mute one.
Okay, now we can hear you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I am the Sinister Porpoise. When you think of Sinister Porpoises, think of the Sinister Porpoise. And my camera's over this way. Unfortunately, there's a cat in front of it. Okay, she's decided to go somewhere else.
Okay, Carrie is asking what level of fear of failure is at play in this. For me personally, that's a big problem. Just because when I grew up as the youngest of 9, so even if I followed somebody's instructions precisely to the letter, I would always have 3 other people telling me I did it wrong.
Mm,
So unfortunately, that got me to the point of, well, somebody's going to chew me out for it regardless, so there's no point in me putting in any effort to try.
that's usually more playing into when you're working with other people or for other people.
Well,
Where it
no,
becomes
because it's,
like
as I
that's for
mentioned,
me.
okay. Yeah, for me, as I mentioned earlier, it's the other thing that once a project is finished, I'm assuming that somebody else is going to be judging my work. So if they're picking up the little flaws and feeling that I didn't do a good enough job. So
Well, it's
yeah,
also
that also, kind of defeats the motivation to really do things.
that'd be where you be putting the whatever you're doing out to the public. So it's not necessarily always something the case with all projects that we get into with this.
Yeah, well, that unfortunately for me, it's just become my mental mode. So even though now I should be realizing that, yeah, the stuff I'm doing in my own apartment, you know, no one else is going to look at very closely and no one else has to live with it anyway. But it's just, I've been in that mode of thinking for so many years that it's hard to shake it.
Mm. That's actually probably thinking about it, it's probably one of the reasons why it's been so difficult for me to continue working on that X-Men fan fiction thing because I plan to try and put it out for some people to read, and that that idea of putting it out there is actually making it more difficult to actually keep going on it.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why actually getting my novel down in a form that other people can read it is taking so long.
That too with any writing really. If you plan to have somebody else read it, that actually becomes the difficult make it difficult to get in, keep going on it. Almost as if it's a part of the disruption itself.
Hmm.
that also where it can look like a procrastination if you're working under somebody or with somebody.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to. Sorry, had to pop out to another tab there for a moment. Yeah, but Carrie was asking about the potential tie to not fearing hell. For me, I don't think that had anything to do with the autism, but that was like one of the first cracks in my beliefs as a child was that the concept of hell seemed so horribly illogical. You know, that we were supposed to be having this all-loving God who was going to fry most of his own creations. You know, and that was just such an obvious
Oh, what did I
logical
miss?
conviction for me that I just couldn't
Apparently, I have
process
unplugged
that
my
hell could ever really
earpiece.
exist.
Mm.
What did you say, Porpoise?
I said, what did I miss? But apparently there's a setting issue on my end.
Just the flying monkeys.
I don't think any of us are narcissists.
Well, mostly today we've been talking just about autistic inertia, the difficulty with, starting and stopping projects. Yep, you're muted again.
You mean like the final I'm supposed to be working on? I did have to go grocery shopping, so I did that.
I gotta do that. I forgot a few things.
And it was ultra important I replay most of Baldur's Gate 3.
Yeah, but see, that's one of the things that Mage was talking about. That a video game can seem like a sense of accomplishment, so it's something you can get yourself immersed in for a long time, and that it's not necessarily procrastination that you're having trouble pulling yourself away from it because you've got a goal there that you have to reach.
Yeah,
And also, it's not necessarily playing in Baldur's Gate may actually be important to you.
Well, I mean, one homework assignment I've got mostly done for a change because that professor overdid thing, but I do have like a grad school project, and the final due for that class. So I've got plenty of time, but it's just I got caught up in the game and kept saying, it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. It's like the YouTube video thing where one more video before going to work.
Yeah. 12 videos later.
Yeah, 12 videos later.
Yeah. Well, that's why I have avoided getting into any of the online multiplayer games because I know how absorbed I can get in those. I mean, just when I had my Commodore 64, there were times that I got absorbed in games that I would play, for 12 to 20 hours straight.
Unfortunately, a lot of these smaller games will actually have built-in stop times methods where you run out of energy in the game where you just can't keep going because there's nothing left to do.
Yeah, Soft Girls introduced me to a couple of interesting games like City Skylines, and it's like, yeah, it looks interesting. I think I would have fun designing it, and it looks like that can go on infinitely. So it looks like one of the things that I could be playing 3 days straight and not realize that the sun has come up twice. Although to her credit, the one time that Soft Girl went a full 24 hours without hearing from me, she calls in a police officer to do a wellness check. So I have to make sure I at least text her every evening, otherwise that's going to happen again.
That's part of where you can get into routines to help break in and out of it.
Yeah. Well, almost every day I go up there, and I feed her cat, and it's part of my routine to take care of her cat.
Speaking of feeding cats, Athena, I need to fill your food dish when I'm done here.
Yep. Ah. And that's one of the things on my list. It's time to buy another bag of cat food because having a third cat to feed, the stuff does not last as long as it used to.
Well, is
So
that because you have multiple cats now?
yes,
Well, it's because I have 3 cats instead of 2, so the bag that used to last 3 months now only lasts 2 months.
I'm sure Athena would love another cat in here.
I was hoping Sammy would, but he's still not completely sold on this idea. So I'm hoping I didn't make a mistake, but at least they have gotten to the point of generally quietly ignoring each other. So
well, I would say you made a mistake then if they're at that point already.
yeah, well, the problem is that Ethan always wants to be in my lap now. So Sammy's son is not getting a lap time, and that's making me sad that he's not, having the close time with me that he used to get. So I'm just hoping he's not feeling rejected for that.
Well, make sure to give him some extra treats, and maybe if you have a chance, maybe pick him up and put him on your lap.
Yeah, well, I have kept it the most special treats. Those tubes of gravy that they only get that if both of them were in the chair with me together. So the best treats they only get if all 3 of us are sitting together.
Yeah, that's good.
Have they realized that yet?
No,
Oh.
I'm still waiting for them to catch on to that being a pattern.
If they haven't, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Well, maybe you should do it at the same time every day. They'll catch on.
That requires me to be awake at the same time every day.
Yeah.
Pick a time you're awake. It doesn't have to be a time you're awake. And don't do it after you wake up, because if you do that often, it becomes the time you wake up every day.
Yeah. Oh, that's why I keep telling people that never feed your cats in the daylight hours. Because if you feed them during daylight hours, as soon as they see the first crack of dawn, they will decide it's time to wake you up for breakfast. So I never feed them before 6 o'clock at night.
Well, Athena's decided every time I get out of bed, it's time to get her treats. That's
Yeah,
even if I take a
Sammy
nap
has
or
that
not.
idea too. Sammy just has the idea that anytime I stand upright, it means it's time for treats. So if I get out of bed or if I get out of my chair, he's right there at his little treat dish. Oh, hey, Kyle.
Hey,
Did we lose Paige? I was trying to get him in here.
I don't know.
Yeah, he kind of popped in and said hi, and
Athena's also decided that when I come home, I don't know. I was playing with my microphone. Because a certain feline individual took.
you kind of dropped in the middle of the sentence there.
Yeah, the microphone decided it was going to come unplug.
It seems you're having technical difficulties with that microphone.
To be fair, it's awfully hard to find waterproof computers.
Yeah. So
Oh, history shows. Carrie, what period of history are you interested in? Jenny, the sloth girl's daughter, was one, grabbed a box from the cabinet and took a handful and started munching. And she complained that these crackers seemed kind of stale. And Sloth Girl had to point out to her that she had grabbed grabbed the box of dog treats. But I'm still wondering what was in those Scooby snacks that Shaggy was as crazy for him as the dog was.
Yeah. I think we all know what was in those Scooby snacks.
No, actually, I think it was just that Shaggy was so strung out with the munchies so often, pretty much always, that it didn't much matter what was in them.
Probably.
There are plenty of theories that Scooby was a hallucination caused by Shaggy's consumption of weed.
I have heard that. Not that he was completely a hallucination, but yeah, the whole thing about the dog talking.
Yeah.
Because it did seem that Shaggy was the only one who seemed to think the dog was actually speaking sentences. But the other thing you have to wonder about is there was no divider between, the back of the front seats and the rest of the van. So if Shaggy was doing that constantly, why weren't all of them high?
Maybe they were.
Maybe he was in brownie format.
So maybe the entire show was all a hallucination and, the van actually never moved. They were all just sitting in the van parked somewhere for all those years.
And all the times they were being chased, there was just them wigging out.
Yeah, it was just somebody going on a bad trip and saying they were being chased by a monster. That's why somebody'd come up and knock on the window and they'd roll it down and they'd say, "Oh, it was really just old Mr. Johnson the whole time." There's Paige.
Hey, there we are.
Howdy. How you doing?
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Why, thank you.
Yes, actually, that's become my new reply. To the people who always say "Jesus bless you," and
Oh yeah, absolutely.
well, my response to that now is "May the dice be in your favor."
There you go. That's a good one. I like it.
I think it's equally valid either way.
Yeah, I kind of the other day I figured out that the best thing to do when somebody says something silly to me as an autistic person is just to say it back to them. I was at my wife's birthday party out at a I don't know, a bar, I guess you would call it. Anyway, this lady's like, "Oh, you're very well spoken for an autistic person." And I looked at her straight in the face and said, "Well, you're very well spoken for an holistic person." What? What? She smiled a little nervously on that one, but I followed it up with another joke to break the tension, so that way she knew I was like joking but making a point.
Well, also, holistic is not a word that is in most people's vocabulary yet.
Yeah, she had studied she knew about neurodivergence and she
okay.
studied psychology in the last like 3 or 4 years.
Okay, so that it wasn't just like a random person, like a cashier or something.
No, I shook her down already. That's a bad thing about me. Since I was a correctional officer, I like immediately just shake people down quick. And what I mean is find out who they are and what they're about, like just really quick. And then I decide to engage or disengage or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's why I put the weird on full display. Actually, that last night when Sloth Girl and I were talking upstairs, and actually we were watching something, some random internet memes, and it said something about that point where you discover that your companion's a weirdo or something like that, and my response was, You didn't pick that up on our first date?
Yeah.
Really?
My wife definitely picked up on it on the one and only date we had.
Yeah. Well, my late fiance too. That we met in an internet chat room. And it was just like she said that by the second time she saw me in that chat room, that she knew I was autistic.
Hmm. Yeah, I had no idea what it was until about 3. Well, I mean, I did, but I didn't realize all the signs and symptoms. I just saw the the kids that were intellectually disabled and autistic, and I thought that's what it was. I knew that there was a such thing as Asperger's because I knew all you guys, but I did. I had no idea what the signs and symptoms were. Is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
I didn't know. As soon as I figured it out, I was like, "Oh." The way it came to me was, I was like, "Wait a minute. This is a diagnosis? No, it's a description of me. Is this my horoscope? My
Well,
horoscope,
like I said in the autistic inertia thing, this is actually the first time I'm really hearing about this myself, and just kind of looking back at some of the things how my life has gone, and things are starting to make a lot more sense comparing it to what we've been talking about today.
Oh, by the
Yeah.
way, you guys didn't know that I had a Tesla. I'm just taking it out on a cruise right now.
So, what's your experience with autistic inertia?
I don't know what you mean by that
Oh,
exactly.
basically,
Well,
it's a thing of where you have trouble getting started at a task, but once you get started, you
Oh.
can't stop.
Yeah, that's why I was late.
And and if it if and usually it'll take an outside a external force to get you to stop, with somebody physically stopping you or some distraction or something from the outside
Hmm.
disrupting your whole way of life and the whole world.
The way I
yeah,
describe it, when I'm in hyperfocus, and a lot of times, okay, I don't use the word special interest for ADHD, although that definitely can apply. I apply that more to autism, but I definitely apply the term hyperfocus to ADHD, although that definitely also applies to um, autism. But the thing is the way I describe it is, if you're asleep and someone was to get the cold water and put a boat horn and pour the cold water on you and do the boat horn at the same time, that's almost as traumatic, or I mean, that's kind of the trauma it feels like
yeah,
when somebody breaks me out of hyperfocus. And I know that sounds stupid because it's like, hey, what's up? But it's traumatic. It is literally traumatic for me. And so it's so hard for me not to be like upset or angry with someone for distracting me when I'm in that state, not because they needed to get my attention and I needed to, give them my attention. It's just the fact that it hurt coming out. It's like, I don't know how else to describe it except for calling it pain. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
no, I know what you mean. That can be very jarring when somebody just pulls you out of that mental focus.
Mm-hmm. So is that what you were speaking of?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That gets into and some of the stuff we were talking about kind of touched on the PDA, and I was hoping that you might be able to explain to people what that's about.
Today, somebody sent me a message, and I can't remember. They asked me to do something that I wanted to do on TikTok, and I sent them a message, said, "How dare you ask me to do that?" And they're like, "What?" And the thing was, it was like, that was a demand. Even though you asked me and I want to do it, now that adrenaline rush has been set off, and the PDA has been set off, and because
PDA.
I
Yeah,
I was even addressed Like you even said something to me, so therefore I had to, whether positively, negatively, whatever, I had to address that. I was forced to, even if it's ignoring it.
I think you need to define PDA for the
Because
audience.
this is not a context I'm used to hearing PDA in, either
This
public
is
display of affection or personal digital assistant.
all right. This is this is pathological demand avoidance.
Also, it's called a lot of autistic people like to call it a pervasive drive for autonomy. So basically, what this we're basically accused of kind of almost being narcissistic in a sense because it's all about me and my bubble. In other words, you can do whatever the heck you want to as long as you don't disturb my little world. Now, if you come in the room and that demands that I turn my head, that causes a visceral flight response. If my phone rings, flight response. I could be waiting for my wife to text me, knowing she's going to text me. When that phone goes off, flight response. I want to run. And that is constant. And I think alexithymia is also tied a little bit more to PDA, although that's me pulling facts out of my keister. So that's not factual. It's just something that I've kind of observed. So what it is, it's an extreme flight response, fight or flight response that's always on. Pretty much.
You'll avoid demands just because they are demands.
Mm-hmm. Even if it helps you. Okay, I want to go to a ZZ Top concert, right? When the day comes for me to go to a ZZ Top concert, I may not go, or I may not be able to go in the door, or I may not, even though I want to, but it's because I have to do it now. And it's about ultimate self-control.
Yeah.
Is what it is. Ultimate, and a lot of people see that as being controlling because no, I'm not getting in your damn car because that's affecting my world. Well, we got to go to the grocery store. Well, I'm not getting in the car because I have to.
Yep.
And it makes zero sense. And you can know what's happening in your head and know it's ridiculous and know it is completely irrational. However, as I put it, the autism doesn't care. You know, your mind is still working that way. And in the same way, I know that like some schizophrenics have known that the elephant is in the room, that it's not real or whatever. It's still there, but they just have to ignore it the rest of their lives, so to speak.
I do find having it in the form of a question rather than a demand tends to help.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. And well, the thing is, this is can you go quick? Can you go get me a soda? Okay, that's not a ask. That's a demand, literally, because the expectation is that you will. So if it's asked in a way that there is no expectation that you will do it, like, you know, if you feel like it, if you happen to be coming downstairs or that kind of thing, that makes it a lot easier. Or, you know, I'm really thirsty. Are you thirsty? Let's get, what do you say we get something to drink? That kind of thing. Instead of saying, get me a drink or I want a drink or whatever, because, and it's stupid. I know it's stupid, but it's how our brains are wired. Something is goofy in there.
Well, yeah, even, you know, how the question is phrased means a lot, because even somebody saying, you know, can you go get me a soda? You know, that still sounds like a demand.
It can be a demand if they expect it to happen, but if they don't expect it to happen,
yeah. So
then you're good to go.
Yeah. Well, Soft Girl has gotten used to phrasing it as, you know, when you get up, can you get me a drink?
Right.
You
right.
know,
and
9 times out of 10, when she does that, I'll get
jump
up immediately and go get it.
But if she said, get me a soda, you'd be like,
yeah,
I'm going to sit here and not poo for the rest of the night. I don't care how much it hurts.
Wow. Maybe I need to turn the volume down a bit.
Just because. Oh, am I getting...
Are we being too loud for you?
Yeah.
Could just be the headphones, but that laugh just came through a little shrill.
Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm not going to be able to stop it.
Oh, you are so lucky. I usually manage to hit the mute before my ticks.
Mm.
I have one that happens a lot of times, like, when I'm just finishing a shower for some reason, that I really thought I should
Old.
get a recording of it because it sounds like, a cartoon villain's maniacal laugh.
Does
And I always wonder if the guy in the apartment adjoining that wall is hearing this.
does the cold bother you when you get out of the shower? I'm wondering if you're having a sensitivity, because that's what happens to me a
No,
lot of times when sensitivities will set off my taking. Although I don't have Tourette's.
no, actually, for me, this is really more to do with the being trans. That it's like when I'm getting out of the shower, I'm shaved, and this is like the first step in going back to presenting as a woman. So it's just kind of the euphoria that I'm going out as a woman again.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Hmm.
This is the best spinner I've ever. I don't like spinners usually, but this has the poppers with it.
I saw one like that just the other day in the store. I was thinking of getting that. That was a spinner with the little poppers.
Mm-hmm.
I had gotten myself a spinner, and I used it when I'm having to be on the phone with somebody.
I got one of those, but a
Right.
student stole it.
Ah, shit.
So I find I get anxiety buildup with trying to talk to people on the phone. So what I was doing was I'd have the spinner that would give me something to focus on other than the conversation.
Yeah.
So this spinner here.
Okay. Well,
Go ahead.
I find I have something similar because a lot of times in my job, people just tell me they're going to do something. And it's like, my first thought is to tell them no.
That's it. That's it right there.
Well,
So-
I'm still kind of stuck at the toddler stage. That my first question is why, and if they can't give me an explanation, my next response is then fuck you.
I don't want to know why they need to go to the bathroom. I just don't care.
Well, yeah, you deal with a different set of questions.
It's like, or I'm going to go to my locker. It's like, and usually
Hey,
I'm like,
Sammy.
could you please sit down and wait until I take attendance? Or, if there's only one person that went out, it's like, okay, just give me your name. I'll just mark it down and you can go.
Really? Then do I have to come back since I'm already marked as been attending the class?
They know there are administrators that walk the hallways, and if they catch them, they'll get into serious trouble.
Hey, Sammy.
I mean, I'm not. It's like they're at least old enough that they can be somewhat responsible for their own actions. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they know what the consequences might be if they choose to break the rules. They can either. They know what happens if they get caught.
That's another trait about PDA is punishment doesn't mean anything to us. Punishment literally means nothing. It'd be much better to say, and this is how I raise my kids. Wow, how did that work for you?
Yeah.
And that was about it. And we kind of would discuss it, and then I go about my business, and that was it. I very rarely, I punished them a couple of times when they were really little so that they understood consequences, but it was only and I didn't hit them or anything. It was relative to the situation. I taught them about consequences.
Yeah, avoidance training has never worked for me at any level.
Mm-mm.
It's only positive reinforcement is the only thing that gets results.
Well, and then if it's positive reinforcement and I know that they're just doing it to try to make me do something, then I will decide if I'm not going to do it because they piss me off, or if I'm just going to manipulate them by appearing to comply. What do you call it? Almost like malicious compliance.
Yeah.
But there are some. I'm sorry, but there are some times in my job where I know they're doing malicious compliance for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
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 Well, yeah, dealing with kids is a whole different thing.
Oh, this is just teachers. I know they're doing malicious compliance for.
Yeah.
Oh no! Oh no!
Well,
That was the worst thing about me. I'm sorry, as a PDA autistic, and this has gotten me in so much trouble at work. And that's doing what the boss said. You know, go mop that floor right now. No, that needs to be. So you go mopping, and then somebody slips on it because they're moving like furniture through there, and you knew they were doing it, but you went and did what you were told.
well, and one
I
of
have
the
never
problems
had
with
anything.
autism, one of
Go
the
ahead.
problems I've run into with autism is that somebody tells me to do something and I go and do it, and they think I'm being doing the malicious compliance or just being an asshole because I took their instructions literally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until they get upset about it that I question what there was another way to do that.
Right. Or why
It's
should I
like
have
I
done it
did
that
what you
way?
told me to. Why are you upset?
Or why
But
should I have done it
yeah.
the other way?
Well, it's just it didn't occur to me that there was another way to do it
Mm-hmm.
until they said I did it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And they think that I do that intentionally. And it's like, no, it's just autistic people will tend to take you literally.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I destroyed an entire operation in the what do you call it, the in the Pacific, off of the coast of Okinawa.
Yep.
I ruined in Okinawa. I ruined an entire operation myself because I obeyed orders. My chief, we were doing this operation, and my chief said to pretend that it was real. So I did. I mean, I didn't like shoot anybody. Don't get me wrong, but what I did is I was supposed to allow these aggressors into the compound, and I didn't know it. And so I stopped them, and they had set up this entire attack for a year, and I prevented the attack and had my Marines counterattack and actually take out the entire aggressors before they got to the place of operations. So basically, the big battle that they had planned for a year never happened. And it was because my chief told me to pretend it was real. I'm like, okay. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've taken things too literally is the main reason I had trouble ever holding a job more than 3 months.
Mm-hmm. I managed to get a lot of jobs where I was fairly independent. I know you ended up doing working for yourself and stuff, for that
Yeah.
same reason, I think.
Yeah, that's I
Hi,
really I had to
Matt.
be self-employed because I just wasn't doing well at trying to follow other people's instructions.
Come on up. Or not.
But as far as PDA is concerned, there is no idea how many autistics fit that profile, and I hope there's talk again about splitting up the ASD diagnosis again, and I sure hope they don't do it. I hope they just leave it ASD, because of the equality of we're just autistic, no matter what the functioning levels are.
Well, and the problem they had with it, and with the reason they rolled Asperger's into it, was just that it's people can have some of the symptoms of several different things. So yeah, it's better to just think that you have this. I said this earlier about that there are like 50 different things that could be part of autism, and any autistic person just has a random selection of these things.
Yeah, I read that essentially they found that the doctors were getting it so screwed up that it was kind of moot. You got one of the four, and it didn't matter what you got because it didn't mean anything anyway. You were autistic, because they were basically screwing up like a PDA person or something. They would say was something else, or whatever, and vice versa. And so basically, to simplify it for the doctors, and the doctors still have no idea. 95% of the doctors have no idea about autism, cannot diagnose it. Particularly, I've sat there with, I walked into psychiatrist's office. Okay, so what are the three main criteria of autism? Well, we're here to work on your mental health today. Okay, good. Then what are the three main criteria of autism? Well, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about your medication. And I'm like, yeah, that's because you don't know. And that pisses them off right off
I
the
was
bat.
I was in and out of therapy for 30 years and saw half a dozen psychiatrists,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody picked up on it until I did a self-test online.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time I was diagnosed with Asperger's, and I showed that to my therapist, who recommended me to a psychologist for it, and the psychologist just kind of said, "Weird, nobody noticed this earlier."
Well, not really. I was institutionalized 3 times. I probably spent 6 months of my life in an institution. And they never caught up picked up on it,
Yeah.
Of course there's a reason for that, but the reason for that is whatever the first doctor put on the record is what they go with. And
Yep.
there was a psychiatrist that proved it. He took a sample of perfectly normal people, like the most normal people he could possibly find. And he had them somehow agree to go to an institution for like a week or whatever it was. And he said, just go be yourself. Just be yourself. Just have fun. And he sent them in there, and he each gave them, like, one he gave schizophrenia, the other one he diagnosed as autism, another one personality disorder, and so forth. And what he found was that on the notes of every single entry reflected the diagnosis directly. They were afraid if their observations didn't show the diagnosis that they would get in trouble or something. So no matter what, they just parroted every single clinician. Every single one. And they were made up bullshit diagnoses.
If they're contradicting what somebody previously said, then they've got a lot of work to explain why they came up with a different diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
If they just go along with what was on the patient's history, then they don't have to explain anything.
Yep.
So it just cuts down on the paperwork for them.
Mm-hmm. And they may not even realize it. They may not even realize that the person's something else because they're not looking at all. They have zero reason to. They've already been diagnosed by the big bad expert there, You see what I'm saying? And what if they and there's a lot of time, particularly where doctors get that attitude, get that pompous attitude, and there's a lot of doctors that you can't approach. Well, particularly if they diagnose somebody with depression, and you say, well, there's some signs and symptoms I've seen here of schizophrenia. Well, you know what? Did you get your PhD? Huh? You ever met doctors like that? I used to be a medic, and I worked in the medical field on and off throughout my life, and boy, there's so many that get egos out the wazoo. You can't even approach them for anything.
Well, it does take more training to be a doctor than it does to be a medic, I think.
Mm-hmm. But it takes. Oh, actually, I can diagnose. Or I did.
I'm not saying
diagnose.
you can't.
Right. But the thing is, that doesn't give anyone the right to be a pompous ass, particularly when they're wrong. And what I'm saying is these are the type of people that if you just come and ask them about something, hey, I noticed this, then they like cop an attitude.
Let me just say something as a former journalist. A lot of people told me I was wrong when I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because I wasn't reflecting what they wanted to hear.
Right.
But it's not that, yes, some people are elitist and it's like, oh yeah, I have an education. It's like, I'm better than you. It's like,
mm-hmm.
It's like, well, yeah, I may know more about computer science than most people in this chat and in the side chat right now, but Mage, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be able to tell Mage about gardening.
Mm-hmm.
Except that my attempts at gardening have been largely unsuccessful, except for the one time I managed to grow lettuce.
And the real problem there is that the people who are educated know that they are highly educated. And when they have some quote layperson, it does not matter how knowledgeable they are, they're going to discount what they say. And
Well,
I've experienced the same thing with dealing with preachers. I mean, I know more than about the Bible than most historically than most preachers by far, but I
you,
can't talk to them about it.
you also have to be careful because sometimes you run into the Dunning-Kruger effect. And it's something you have to watch out for where
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
you may think you're right.
Oh, I've
And
always been very conscious of that. Always. And that's why I ask people, and that's an autistic trait right there too. Do you think I'm right?
No.
No, but that was that was actually my point, that we actually ask a lot of questions, tend to more so than allistic people, and I think it's because allistic people are afraid to appear ignorant, and autistic people seek that knowledge so deeply that we don't care.
But
I don't. Go ahead, Porpoise.
there've also been times when I'm confident I'm right and found out it was wrong.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Just because someone had studied something more.
You just own up to it and go on.
Well,
I think part of the thing with asking a lot more questions and needing more things explained, is that holistic people, have like social defaults and things, that they have default settings for how to respond to things.
Mhm.
I think autistic people don't generally have the defaults, that there is no default setting. You've got to find out what it is for each situation.
And this might actually play into that PDA thing, but if somebody was to ask me, "Hey, do you have any questions?" my mind goes blank.
Well, I mean, as an autistic person, I ask questions a lot.
But yeah, if they don't ask me, if you have if there's I ask for questions, I can think of a bunch of questions. But if somebody asks, "Does anybody have any questions in the group or whatever?" Can't think of any.
Yeah, I always have that at the end of my doctor's appointment, that they ask, is there you have any questions on this? And it's like, unless I have notes prepared ahead of time, I can't think of anything.
I always ask a lot of questions, usually like, did you do your homework?
I forgot.
Ethan
Dog
never
ate it.
does his homework.
When you multiply x times -3, what do you get?
I don't know.
Alphabet soup.
Or do you really think I don't know the difference between Scratch and JavaScript?
I don't.
Oh, that would have been more clever if they knew, if it were someone who hadn't studied computer programming languages. But Scratch, they're both programming languages, but Scratch is a block language designed to play video games and they're on Scratch.
Oh.
And they were trying to convince me it was JavaScript.
Oh.
Which is a normal programming language that you
right.
see text for. It's like,
right.
First off, I can tell the language just by looking at it. Secondly, if you're really trying to fool me, you might not want to be on a site where it literally says Scratch when you're using it on the screen.
Yeah.
Purple, you were saying something that kind of struck me. Since I'm staring at Wolf here, imagine if there was a wolf that was born with zero instinct to hunt. How difficult life would be for that wolf. And I think in the same way with what you were saying, without having that natural instinct for the socialization, I think it also makes our life very difficult to navigate. Yeah. Just like how?
Yeah, since you mentioned Scratch and JavaScript, I decided to do a quick Google and kind of quick look at them, and yeah, they look nothing alike.
I got to figure out how to make my avatar and get rid of the background. I can't do it. I've tried it with Paint and it's not good enough to do it. I don't have any other programs. I was looking at some online, but they're not really powerful enough, the free ones, to do it.
You can remove it.
I liked it better before you use the green screen.
You can remove the background with a few lines of Python code.
With what? Oh, with code?
Of Python code with the right library.
Right. Yeah, I have no. I'm not that savvy, and like my daughter did it on PowerPoint once, and then I actually managed to do it once on Photoshop. But my computer died. I had this brand new 2 terabyte drive that just exploded after about 6 months.
If you can do it on Photoshop, you might be able to use GIMP.
Well, yeah, but is GIMP free online?
Yes, that's free.
Yeah.
Well, it's not
Oh.
online, but
Yeah,
probably
you
download
can
it online.
free.
download it.
Oh,
You
okay,
can
cool.
download GIMP for free.
It's an open source thing. It works very similar to Photoshop.
Oh, cool. Thank you. We'll try that.
But as far as I can tell, the layout and
Sorry.
menus are not the same.
You like the regular backdrops or whatever better? Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I embrace the old hippie vibe, so
Yeah, I don't have the light balance in here quite right tonight for some reason.
I was wondering why you had the Soviet spacecraft behind you.
Is that what it is? Is that
Well,
Mir?
At one point you had is it Mir? Okay, it must have had 2 of the Soyuz spacecraft docked to it.
Oh, I have no idea
At one
what's
point.
up there. Diana would know. She'd be able to tell you everything. Right?
Well, it was the ISS at one point too.
Okay, so we got lots of space nerds here.
Well, in Dead Kennedy in Space, he just did a whole 3-part series on the Apollo iceberg.
I had a Pepsi can that went up in one of the Apollo missions. I had a bunch of stuff. My uncle was a patent attorney for NASA, and when he passed, my they're my second cousins. They all took the stuff they wanted. There's all this stuff from NASA left over, so I took it home. Eventually, it went to White Sands, New Mexico, at the museum there.
Yeah, there were traveling around. There are about a dozen Lego minifigs that had been up on the ISS.
I have a friend who has code on the International Space Station. Will eventually have code on the moon.
Wow.
Unfortunately, she didn't understand all the Halo jokes that came after her. Came towards her when she told me she was working on the Halo module. And then she was asking me, it's like, why are there modules named Covenant, Warthog, and Ghost?
I get a couple of those. I never played Halo, but I did watch the first few seasons of the Red versus Blue show.
So they're literally paying homage to Halo.
The module's named, it's an acronym that says Halo, and Red versus Blue is, if that was your question.
Yeah.
Well, if the people programming it were fond of the game, I'm not surprised that they use some of the codes in there.
Well, you name it Halo, it's gonna it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
It's a very popular game.
Yeah,
and now they got a movie.
A long time.
Mm-hmm. My son loved it. That's the only reason I know anything about it.
It's like if you have a mission named Doom, someone is eventually going to create something called the BFG 9000.
Yeah. I remember Doom was trying to compete with Halo like in the beginning, and then Doom kind of
came out about a decade earlier.
Yeah. Or what? Did it? Oh, okay. Well, but it disappeared. Doom just kind of faded out for whatever reason.
Yeah, Doom was one of the very early 3D shooters. It wasn't the first because that was Wolfenstein 3D, but
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
But it was Wolfenstein 3D was like the engine could only handle like straight lines.
I think the first Doom was 2D, wasn't it? Wasn't like the first Doom 2D?
The original Wolfenstein game was for the Apple IIe, but Wolfenstein 3D was the first-person 3D shooter.
I'll be darned.
I think.
Yeah, you're right.
I thought that the first Halo, or not Halos. The first Dooms were 2D, weren't they? Almost
No.
like the old Labyrinths. No,
I
they
think
were
you're
3D?
thinking of Duke Nukem.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, I'm lost on the video games.
And now Doom is something we like. If we found an ancient computer, someone's going to install Doom on it.
Yeah.
Or Linux, one of the two.
Yeah,
I think
there's been some crazy stuff they've installed Doom on.
I think it would be fun to play Zelda on a Super Nintendo.
The original Zelda, or
Yep. On a Super Nintendo. The original Zelda was cool too. Oh my god, it was so bad that it was cool.
Okay, well, have we run out of things on the autism topic here? Do we have any further questions from the audience?
Haven't seen anything from the audience lately.
yeah, I haven't seen anything except Jenny posting a YouTube link.
Yep. Yeah, that's I was noticing that Jenny's the only one who's posted for a bit. I
Best
know
dog
Carrie said
treats.
she was going off.
The best dog treats are really tasty. I should get a dog sometime.
Yep.
My kids used to go to the feed store, and the first thing they would do, they had these dog bones by bulk. And my kids would just go get a dog bone and eat. And I'm talking like they were like 4 or 5 or whatever. And the funny thing is at first I was like, no. And the lady's like, don't worry about it. And so I was like, okay. For years, those kids went in there and did it. And people would just look and not even bat an eyelash at it. I was like, what? Like at Walmart, it would have been a whole different deal. That somebody probably would have called the cops, but it was a feed store.
Actually, one of the things I liked about Wegmans was a grocery chain. I guess they're all up and down the East Coast, but in New York. And one of the things they had was right when you come in at the beginning of the produce section, they would have a bin there of apples and bananas, and it'd say, "Take one free for your kid."
Oh, that's cool.
Actually,
You know,
we have
so yeah, you give the kids something to snack on while you're shopping, and they're not gonna, not gonna be disrupting other people so much.
Fresh
Mhm.
Time does that here, but I don't know if it's a chain or just a local store.
The grocery store around here, if you go up to the bakery, they'll give the kid a free cookie.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame we didn't do a show on autistic food
Oh, do we
preferences.
need to do one?
Well, this month is over in a few more days.
Well, yeah, but
Next week,
I never finish things on time, so
next week is my university study week, so
Yep.
which means let's cram everything we forgot to get into the topic. Instead of let's give them a week to study, usually. I really hate that, but that's what most professors do.
yeah. Well, next Wednesday is the 6th-year anniversary of my channel. So that's going to be our Wednesday chat this week.
You said the 6th?
I heard 60th, but I'm pretty sure she meant 6th.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure she meant 60th. It's been a while.
No, well, 6 years since I created this channel. I was on YouTube for about 6 months before that under another handle. So, basically I just I took care of pissing people off before I settled on a final name.
Yeah, I just looked. It's been like 7 years for me, I think now, and I've got like a whole 400 subscribers. Like, I'm like, maybe I should work on the channel someday.
I can't imagine holding a grudge for another YouTuber and just pissing him off for an entire year at all.
Well,
Can't imagine anyone doing that.
Bionic Dance blocked me on her Facebook page because I called Star Wars a space western.
Some parts of it are.
Yeah. What
It's-
Mage is pulling up an image here. What you got, Mage?
Oh, this is just something unrelated. It was going back to the Doom thing. If you want to look at it, okay.
Sure, sure. Let's see what. Whoop! We both hit the button. Go ahead.
All right.
Your picture.
Well, I don't usually recommend CBR. They tend to be a garbage.
oh my
site,
goodness.
But
Ooh.
and the weird devices they got run on Doom on. You have ATM here and
Well, they are computers.
Calculate.
It's not surprising.
Yeah, calculator.
Why wouldn't they use one of the higher models that you can actually have color graphics on?
Maybe
Well, why
because
didn't they use the TI-99A? Because that was, probably the one that was most prolific for so many years.
I don't know when it was done. Who knows? But
Mhm.
we got a pregnancy
the-
test.
I have the TI-84. Okay.
What? All
I
right,
didn't even
yeah.
know those were embedded devices.
Some of them guess they are.
I guess some of them have Bluetooth now.
You
So
know what
look
would be
at that.
fun to do is get an old trash 80, the box, and put a real computer inside of it. Inside the, huh?
People have done things like that.
Oh yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah, we got a thermostat that somebody hooked up to play Doom on. What's this?
Actually, the hard drive I got from my Commodore 64 was housed in an IBM AT case.
Oh
Yeah, I
really?
mean,
Yeah,
Apple-
it was a 40 megabyte hard drive, and that's how big they were at the time.
I mean, you would have a lot of room inside one of those old tube things, but I don't know. You'd have to figure out a way to get the back end of the tube out without busting it.
Apple Watches also Turing complete devices. Not surprising, they can run Doom.
Doom on
Oh my
Game
word!
Watch. Well, that one kind of makes more sense. Piano.
That's what I was thinking of. It was like
Someone need
that.
a Raspberry Pi to do that one.
It was 3D. That's what I was thinking of. It was 3D, but it was like the old dungeon things where you just had a hallway and you could kind of turn right or left, and that was it. That's what I was thinking of. But that was still technically 3D.
Display on a printer.
Yeah. That is hilarious. So this must be like a challenge for people to see what they can play
Yes.
Camera.
it
And that's the number one here. The GPS.
on.
I don't know. I think the pregnancy test was the most entertaining one. Honestly,
What?
I would have put that one as the first one, as number one, pregnancy
Oh.
test.
Someone got like a Raspberry Pi Zero W and an SD card because pregnancy tests are not Turing complete.
Oh, they don't have the right screen for it?
No, they don't have any.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought they had any screen in them at all, because all they have to display is a plus or a minus sign.
Yeah.
They don't have any chips, and all they need to do is interact with certain chemicals.
Yeah.
You don't need electronics for that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I could see somebody coming out with an electronic pregnancy test that would be reusable.
I mean, yeah, that might be doable, but that doesn't look like what that is.
No, I don't think
No.
that's what that is.
And I
How
have
funny.
seen like Walmart sell discount pregnancy test for like $1.
I have seen pregnancy tests at the Dollar Tree, and that seriously worried me.
Well,
Do you really want to, rely on something you bought from the Dollar Tree for something that important?
I was just surprised like it was on clearance. It's like, I'm not sure if I needed a pregnancy test. I'd want to buy them off the discount rack at Walmart.
That would work the same.
Or the Dollar Tree. Well, I meant the Dollar Tree probably actually would work. They wouldn't be highest quality though.
Well, I'm just wondering about, were they at the Dollar Tree because they had a higher rate of false positive than their full quality control allowed for?
Oh, geez.
Okay, so this was a digital pregnancy test that they used.
Okay. Weird. Okay, well, I think we should shut down here for the day then. Um, Porpoise, you have any final thoughts or anything you want to plug? I know your mad scientist did a math thing.
Well, honestly, that had to be taken down because I was showing Discord at the end. It was not my
Oh.
intent.
Okay, I didn't get to watch it yet. I thought it was still on my list to watch later.
And it was the first run for something like that. Hopefully, we'll have better things later.
Mhm.
More smoother, and I'll remember how StreamYards works.
Excellent T-shirt, by the way. I love tie-dye. That's my thing.
Oh, yeah, there's a craft store near us that is going out of business. The Sloth Girl and I were there yesterday, and I came back with 2 bags full of tie-dye stuff.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
So, yeah, and I've been, like, watching at the thrift store that basically anything that fit me that was white and all cotton, I was buying. So,
Mhm.
now I got a whole bunch of stuff to experiment with tie-dye.
Black, purple, and blue make good tie-dye colors together.
And yellow and blue make green.
I was I broke my foot and I was in a wheelchair because I couldn't use crutches because my arms would dislocate from my Ehlers-Danlos. Or if they didn't dislocate, they'd separate really bad. But anyway, so I started tie-dyeing because I could stand on my one foot at the sink and sit back down in the chair. So that's what I did. I learned to tie-dye.
Yeah, I figure I'm just gonna pick up a couple more 5-gallon buckets and just do them in the shower stall that I can have 3 or 4 colors going.
Mm-hmm. As long as it's not a plastic shower stall.
No, the shower's all tile.
Well, I mean, then you would have to bleach it, basically, is what it would be. But
yeah. Well, Paige, what have you got coming up? I know you've been doing a lot more live streams.
Yeah, and I'm getting fancy. See, I actually tonight I'm going to start my first live stream on Kick, and I probably might be on there about 5 hours. I am now capable of going on 5 different platforms at once to do the Autistic Page, which basically is a show Monday through Friday. I am going to be doing it. I finally decided 6 Mountain Standard Time, 6 to 8. I just broke it in the middle. Monday through Friday, and I will be talking about autistic news, science, stuff like that, and giving commentary in my biased ass opinion.
Hey, and Kick is actually one of the very few alternate services that I have an account on.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I am
You
actually.
can thank MC Wrecker for that because he does his guitar practice on there late at night. Well, late at night for me because he's in New Zealand.
Yeah, right now they're doing a huge payout. They basically, if you earn $1, they only keep 5 cents of that dollar and send you the 95 cents. So most of the other platforms or whatever, you're getting probably closer to a penny on the dollar, if anything.
I've heard a lot of complaints about how little Twitch pays.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I don't care. I'm just trying to get the message out. But at this point in time, it's getting to the point. It's like I'm not making any money. I might as well, if I can, make some money at it. If people are going to pay me to advocate, then why the hell not? That can make me be able to put me in a position to be able to advocate more. So
well, that's like I've got the Patreon. I didn't really expect anyone to subscribe, but I've got 7 subscribers now. So
wow,
they're helping pay my internet bill.
Yeah, I just had to up mine because I went from 60 megabytes per second or whatever megabits per second to 600. Just because when you're streaming 5, and I'm doing it on one, I'm going to try it tonight on my computer.
The important thing for streaming is upload speed. What type of service are you using?
Fiber optic, and I've got 600 per second.
That means your upload speed and download speed are the same. That's not the case for cable and DSL usually.
Mm.
Like I get a 10 megabits per second upload speed from my cable modem,
Mhm.
which is good enough for most of what I do.
Right.
Yeah,
But
it's
I was having a
I'm on
little bit of
cable.
trouble figuring out my bit rate and everything else because I was running 4 and it was beginning to get a little laggy and stuff like that. But I figured all that stuff out finally. My computer can handle it. It was just I didn't know what my settings were. I was getting like 75% on my CPU, but I have 2 GPUs and a capture card, so I just split everything up.
Well, the GPU won't help you with the bandwidth. It will help you with the graphics processing.
Yeah, I've got NVIDIA chips, or I've got a 3060 Ti,
But
so I can use that
Okay.
processing chip,
okay,
and that's what I did.
a little
Well,
bit more nerding out here.
Yeah.
But
What?
for video processing, memory is more important than the graphics cards.
Okay.
I-
We can
I
do
got
more
plenty.
nerding out after we
Yeah.
finish with the public part. Mage, did you have anything you wanted to plug?
No, don't really have anything in this time around.
Okay. Yeah. Well, same with me. That Mage and I and Jenny will be doing our regular stream on Wednesday at 2:00 Central.
And if I can make it in, I will, but I'm
Yep.
usually tired at that time because it's still the school year.
Yep. Other than that, I really don't have anything planned at this point. So with that, we will bid you all a good day. Bye bye.